Pokémon Scarlet and Violet are games I really didn't like. Took questionable graphics to Pokemon I couldn't get myself to like. In the end, I stopped playing 8 hours into the game and never touched it again. And after almost 4 years of this game being out, I finally decided it was time to give this game another shot. Now, will I be playing on the Switch 2 for better graphics? No, I'm too broke for that. And the fact that the game still hasn't improved for the Switch 1 is insane. Pokemon not loading in if you run too fast, the game being super laggy at times, to my game straight up crashing. Will I still hate the game when it's all said and done, or will this somehow be one of the best modern Pokemon games I've ever played? Today I'm going to take you on my personal journey to beating Pokemon Scarlet for the first time, so let's get started. So after putting on the ugliest fit I've ever seen, we get introduced to the director of the Naranja Academy, Clavel, as he's gonna talk to us about the school we're going to attend and gives us our starter Pokemon. I go for Fuecoco as I'ma be honest, the fire ghost typing is just too cool to pass up, and I name him Crunchwrap. We also meet Nemona and she's gonna be our rival. A lot of people don't like her because she wants to battle you all the time, but I grew up playing Pokemon Black and White. I love me some rival fights. It turns out she's already a champion ranked trainer, but for the love of the game, she's starting over and we battle. I will say, I won't talk about every fight we have or this video would be super long. After the fight, we can explore a bit, and after not liking any of the new Pokemon in the area, I realized I'm probably going to have a mix of new and old Pokemon, which is going to be a nice change of pace since I'm always using Pokemon I never used before. But I'm not going to lie, I was pretty picky. Eventually, I make my way to this lighthouse where we hear a Pokemon scream and find this orange dragon thingy about to get jumped. So we end up falling off the cliff for being too nosy and help this Pokemon out by giving it a sandwich, and it actually started moving around. But I should have minded my business. We get jumped. We do eventually run away and find ourselves back at the lighthouse where we run into this guy named Arvin. I thought he was a funny dude. I mean, he knows something about this new Pokemon as he does not like this thing at all. And he does eventually slip up as we find out his name is Koraidon and he's not in his true form. But every time Nemona presses him about it, he ignores her. Dude does not care. Nemona also mentions that his mom used to be a famous professor named Sada, but he seems like he doesn't like his mom either. He said if we want to keep Koraidon, we're gonna have to battle him, but it wasn't much of a fight. He had a Skolvet of all things. Once the fight was over, he hands over Koraidon's Pokeball and tells us he's our problem now, as he ignores Nemona again and leaves. One thing I do a lot but won't talk about is exploring. I spent a lot of time looking at every area, trying to find a Pokemon to use, but almost always came out empty-handed. And I don't know, it just felt like nothing was speaking to me. I also battled a couple trainers, and one thing I didn't like was the camera angle. It always felt awkward, and even when I tried messing with it, I just feel like I made it worse. Eventually, I ran into Nemona again and we fight where she shows off terrestrializing for the first time, which I kinda liked. I think being able to change the type of your Pokemon is cool, but the thing on the top of their head just looks really dumb. And honestly, I wished I used it a little bit more. Alright, now that we made it a Messagosa, I ran into these people called Team Star as they're trying to recruit someone who doesn't want to join, and they make this funny pose which reminds me a lot of Team Flare, so it's hard to hate on them when they're that confident. I could never. After beating one of them up, Nemona finds us and gives us a Terra Orb of our own, and we test it out on another Team Star member, and it was pretty fun to use. When the battle was over, they ran away and the girl from before thanks us and leaves. With that, I can finally head to the academy, and it kinda set the tone for the game, as some cutscenes were kinda choppy, but I'm pretty sure it used to look even worse than this. We also end up having a lot of story to do here, and now that I'm actually paying attention to the story, I'm kinda interested to see what I'll like and what I'll hate. So to break it down, Nemona tells us that we should become champion ranked trainers and gives us all the locations to the gym to hopefully face the league one day, while Arvin is trying to look for these special herbs that have healing properties, but they're guarded by really strong Pokemon called Titan Pokemon, and since he sucks at battling, he wants our help, so now we have to face 5 oversized Pokemon. And to make things worse, someone named Cassiopeia hacks our phone and tells us to help them get rid of Team Star, as they're causing problems for the school and students. And what even happened? I've been here for 5 minutes and somehow everyone wants my help. This is gonna be rough. After all that was over, we get called to the director's office where we finally meet Professor Sada for the first time, and that's when it hit me. The reason why I picked Scarlet over Violet was because the professor was hot. Don't judge me. It turns out Koraidon was originally her Pokemon, and she asked us to keep caring for Koraidon as she's no longer able to, and we agree. After that, weeks pass and we finally get to explore the whole world and see where the wind takes us. And what an intro. That was pretty long, and we have a bunch of stuff to do now. As Nemona, Arvin, and Cassiopeia ask what I'm gonna do first, and honestly, I don't know. So with that, I go ahead and explore around as I try to look for a Pokemon to use, and in the end, I picked up a Capsakid that I named DLT. I'm pretty sure it turns into a two-headed pepper, and it reminded me a lot of the pea shooter in Plants vs Zombies, so why not? With not much else to do, I go ahead and fight my first gym leader, Katie, but since she was using bug-type Pokemon, with Crunchwrap we spam Ember to win the fight. From here, I ended up in the South Province and ran into this ugly crab. I thought about facing it, but with my main Pokemon being Fuecoco and Capsakid being trash, yeah, I'ma leave. I gotta fight a Pokemon real quick. And after looking for way too long, I ran into this whole flamingo. I thought it was so ridiculous. They put no effort into this thing, so I had to use it. I named him Quesadilla, and from here, I ended up getting sidetracked as I kept looking for Pokemon to use, where I ran into a Sandile, probably one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I named him Cinnamon Twist, and he was probably the only Pokemon where I knew immediately I wanted this guy on my team. From here, I had totally forgot about the Cliff Titan, aka the Ugly Crab, so I ended up heading to my second gym instead, where I ran into Nemona again, and I can confirm she is crazy. I mean, I knew something was off when she said what I was doing battling someone else, when all the battling I would ever need would be with her. But we also meet her at the first and now second gym, where she swears that she didn't sneak ahead of us so that we would run into each other again to battle. You know, never mind. I'll just keep it to myself. Going back to the gym, each gym has their own gym challenge, and this time around we had to find a couple Sunfloras, and I couldn't help but laugh on how bad it looks. Like, once you catch about 6 of them, it just starts to look a little crazy. But I will say, I think that was the only time where there was like a noticeable lag. Like, for me, it did lag when I played the game while I was like looking around. But when it came to like the actual battles or the important cutscenes, like nothing happened. It looked pretty normal. So I think towards the end of the game, I didn't care about the graphics as much, as it just looked okay to me. But I will say there's still no excuse for the game to look this bad. I honestly don't understand why it doesn't look good. With that, we fight Brassius, and since I just caught Quesadilla, I just use him to beat him up, so no problem there. Once we leave the gym, I had a feeling that I had forgot to do something, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and with the next gym being close by, I figured I might as well just face the electric gym, but I wanted to get an Eviolite since Cinnamon Twist wasn't going to be evolved yet, so I searched it up, and apparently I can just fight a couple trainers to get the item, but man, this last trainer destroyed my whole team. Her Indeedee hit really hard, and when I finally managed to knock it out, she just sent out a Pokemon that could wipe my team even faster. I was not expecting that. I tried using items like reviving, healing, and I still lost. It took me like 6 attempts. Eventually, I got the Eviolite, so now I can head to Levincia to face Iono. So with Cinnamon Twist, we knock out a bird I can't pronounce, Bellibolt, and Luxio. He was on a generational run, as with each Pokemon going down, our attack would get raised from Moxie. Her last Pokemon is Miss Magius, and she terrestrializes into electric type and uses Hex, while we use Dig and find out she has Levitate, so nothing happens. I thought we were gonna get punished as we got confused, but Cinnamon Twist did not care and landed 2 bites to win the fight. Honestly, I got real lucky there. With 3 badges down, I decided that I should probably do something else, so let's go face one of the Team Star members, and I go with the Fire Crew, as Cinnamon Twist just slapped up the electric gym, so how hard could it be? I got stomped on. It wasn't even funny. Okay, let me rewind. So pretty much Cassiopeia gives us a rundown on how we're gonna take down Team Star, as we have to fight a bunch of Pokemon before we can face the boss, and if we manage to beat the boss, they have no choice but to step down, as it's one of the rules they created when they made Team Star. Luckily, we don't have to do much when it comes down to actually fighting 30 Pokemon, as we could just do the quick battles and watch our Pokemon handle business. But unlike the gym challenges, for each star base is the exact same challenge, which I guess is fine, but the fights themselves definitely made up for it, especially if you had a weird team like mine. When it was time to face Mela, her Reveroom was a straight menace. Not only was it fast, it only got faster after each turn, and with them hitting pretty hard as well, we got wiped. I ended up trying like 3 more times, but it all ended the same way. Alright, I'll remember that. So with no choice, I run away and decided I was gonna have revenge one way or another and face another Team Star boss, being Giacomo. And this was way easier. His Reveroom was a bit on the tankier side, but he didn't do as much damage, so with Quesadilla, I used low kick to knock them out. Now that's what was supposed to happen the first time. After the fight, we actually get a flashback of Giacomo's past, as we find out that he was class president and started making rules that were a bit much and got a lot of hate because of it, but he didn't mean any harm and he's actually a chill guy. We also learned that the star bosses have their own boss that they call Big Boss. I know, not creative at all, but they haven't been able to reach him. Once that was over, Clive comes along and he actually appeared a while back, but the emo he does once he appears is so cringy. I couldn't do it. It took me so long to get used to it. Oh man, it's so bad. Anyways, all we really need to know is that he's trying to get more information about Team Star, but that's none of our business, and we leave. After that, Cassiopeia gives us a call and she sends someone to give us our reward, and it turns out to be the girl we saved a while back, and her name is Penny, and we'll see her from time to time. From here, I finally remember what I was trying to do way back, and that was to face the Crab Titan, but since I was far out, I decided to go for a different one, as I was already in the Asado Desert, where we run into Great Tusk, which was a super cool Pokemon, but unfortunately was super tough. I didn't stand a chance. It was just too fast and too strong. I would get one shot. Okay, this game went from super easy to super hard out of nowhere. I'm guessing I'm really underleveled because there's no way my Pokemon are that bad. After 3 more attempts, I think it's time to go for the Crab Titan, and sure enough, it was super easy. I was definitely supposed to face this guy ages ago, and it turns out there's a second phase where they get stronger from eating an herb, and that's when Arvin comes along and helps us battle, but he didn't do much as we take care of him after 2 hits. Though he doesn't help us much in battle, where he really shines is making sandwiches out of the special herbs that he was looking for, and as we eat, Koraidon comes out and eats the rest of our sandwich, which in turn is slowly getting him back to his original form, which gets Arvin excited, but he stops himself from saying too much, so I'm pretty sure he's hiding his own Pokemon. Now that we made it outside, Professor Sada gives us updates on Koraidon's condition as we beat the Titans, so we can assume we can get more power-ups as we beat them up. From here, I knew I still wouldn't stand a chance against Mela, so I'm heading to the water gym instead. So I ended up prepping a little bit, and I got myself a Leaf Stone, so I was finally able to evolve DLT, and hopefully she can do something for once, as she's just been chilling in our bag the whole time. This is also where I make the heartbreaking decision to let go of Quesadilla. I honestly did like him at first, but as I kept using him, he got a bit boring, as his moveset didn't really change, and at the end of the day, he's just a flamingo, like copy and paste. So I thought I'd use something else, and I ended up grabbing 2 new Pokemon, one of them being Mankey that I named Cinnabon, as he did get a new form and I want to see how good he is, and a Murkrow that I named Baja Blast. And while I do love Murkrow, I also hate him at the same time, as he did me dirty. I actually made a video on trying to find a shiny Murkrow, and you can maybe guess why I hate him right now. In any case, I ended up going pretty far out and I found myself facing another Titan, being Bombirdier. And with DLT, we actually managed to beat him up. It's like somehow he didn't have any flying type attacks. When it was time for that rematch with Arvin, he didn't do much again, as we beat the Titan up pretty easily. And Arvin is low-key shameless as he actively waits for us to deal with these huge boulders falling down a mountain before he helps us out, but I guess his sandwiches are too good to start complaining now. After the fight, we find another herb where Koraidon eats it again and gains the ability to swim, where we learn more about Arvin as we watch him crash out when Koraidon tries to eat his sandwich, which isn't so odd as he did say he didn't like him, but we find out he was actually hiding a Mabostiff who means the world to him. Unfortunately, he did get hurt really bad and never recovered, but since we've been collecting these herbs, he's slowly been feeling better, and now I'm invested in saving his Pokemon. But for now, I got a gym to face, and for this challenge, we had a bid on some seaweed, and the gym leader actually gave us money to bid on it, and I was trying to buy it as cheap as possible to pocket the money, but we ended up paying a little more than half, shaking my head. Don't judge me. These held items are not cheap. With that, we faced Kofu, and as soon as he sent out Trio, we started having problems, as they were super fast and used Headbutt to knock out 3 of my Pokemon. So I sent out Cinnabon and used Cross Chop to knock them out, but his Crabominable just used Crab Hammer to finish us off. I know my Pokemon's typing overlap with each other, but I really did just want to use Pokemon I've been wanting to use for a while now. So I was definitely expecting to have problems as we played through the game. I just didn't think it would be this bad. I will say DLT is good for this gym, but she only has physical moves and she runs on special attack. So she wasn't that helpful, and this would slowly become a pattern for DLT, which really sucks, but overall all my Pokemon's attack sucks as well. So it looks like I'm gonna have to EV train soon. Another thing is just that I really don't know the typing to all of these new Pokemon, so it really is just trial and error. I feel like this definitely makes the game more fun to go through, since everything is a mystery and I'm either flying by or fighting for my life. Going back to the gym, I ended up evolving Cinnamon Twist and giving all my Pokemon held items. With that, let's try again. This time around, I sent out Cinnamon Twist to knock out Veluza, getting an attack boost, so when Trio came out again, they were still faster, but Water Pulse didn't knock us out, and we used Crunch to one-shot them, getting another boost in our attack. His last Pokemon is Crabominable, and we used Rock Tomb, not doing much, but lowering speed, hoping this would help out DLT as they use Slam. I thought it was over, but that's when our Focus Band activated and we use another Crunch before going down. After that, we used DLT to win the fight. Once the battle was over, Cinnabon evolved into a Primeape, and now we're getting closer to his final form. Not too long after, we run into Nimona again, and she wanted to battle us, but she was using a specific team for this gym, so she had to decline, and I found it funny how she declined a battle she asked herself, and was butthurt about it. Now that Cinnamon Twist evolved, it was time for our rematch with Mela, when suddenly I get hit with Lore. Clive pretty much gives himself away that he's the director, as he's trying to figure out what to do with Team Star, as if they don't come back to school in time, they're gonna get expelled. The problem is, the rumors about them aren't adding up, as they're saying Team Star are the bullies that cause people to drop out, but after doing Giacomo's story, it looks like everyone's got it twisted. After all that happened, we could get back to facing Mela, where I did not have my proudest moment, because everything went wrong. Once Reverum came out, unfortunately Cinnamon Twist was not fast enough, and we get hit with Blazing Torque, doing massive amount of damage while also getting burned. So when we used Dig, we didn't do nearly as much as we should, and we go down. From here, I threw everything at them, no shame, until DLT was the only one standing to barely win the fight. I don't want to talk about it. She was cheating. After the fight, we learned more about Mela and how they bullied her because she was pretty, so she made herself look tough to stop them from bullying her, as we also learned that the rumors of Team Star plotting something against the school was a lie. While they did build the Starmobile, it was for the bullies, and in the end, it turns out they didn't even get to use them. Once that was over, I wanted to fight another Titan, so I headed to the East Province, where I ran into the Steel Titan, but for the first time, I actually had trouble encountering it. For some reason, when I got close to it, it would run away, so I tried jumping on it, and I fell so slow, it ran away again. I think I spent more time trying to encounter it than actually beating this thing up, as I just used Cross Chop a couple times. And even though it wasn't hard at all, I did like how dumb it looked. Once that was over, we find the herb with Arvin and we feed it to Koraidon and Mabostiff, where Koraidon could now jump higher, and Mabosstiff is finally starting to get his personality back as he was able to speak again, as we watch Arven break down as he hasn't heard him bark in so long, and low-key that hits deep as it makes me worry for my own dogs as they're only getting older. I wasn't expecting his story to hit me as much as it is. With that on my mind, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I headed to the Pokemon Center where Nurse Joy can actually recommend you to do something, and it sent me to the Fighting Crew base. So as I head over there, I ended up reaching the Poison Crew first, and since I'm here, I might as well face Atticus. This is where I finally get my wake up call, as my Pokemon were slower, didn't do much damage, and were made out of paper. If I was gonna use Pokemon I really wanted to use no matter what the type, I gotta take it up a notch and finally EV train my Pokemon, which I did, and it took a really long time. The first thing I had to do was actually find the right Pokemon to grind, and then go around the area to spawn camp them, which took longer than I thought, as I had to take it slow looking around. As I mentioned before, if we move too fast, the Pokemon don't spawn in. Eventually, I get most of my Pokemon EV trained, but I got really tired of grinding. This is what I get for not paying attention to making sandwiches, because I'm sure it would have went way faster. In any case, I also went around and killed everything I came across, as each Pokemon can give certain materials to make TMs, so having everything really helps when you need a certain TM, like Bulldoze. With that, I make it back to Atticus, where my game crashed. I couldn't believe it. I just stared at this black screen for like 6 minutes straight. I didn't even want to know when was the last time I saved. In the end, I think I lost all my material to make TMs, which took some time, so I was a bit butthurt for a while. Once I came back, I just grabbed the material I needed to make Bulldoze and kept it moving as I faced Atticus. Since I taught Bulldoze the Cinnabon, I was able to knock out Stunk Tank, saving Cinnamon Twist from getting badly poisoned. From here, Cinnamon Twist showed no mercy as he used Dig to knock out most of his Pokemon, getting a boost in attack after each one. Once Reveroom came out, we were able to land 2 massive hits before going down to a spin out. After that, I sent out Cinnabon, and with Bulldoze, we win the fight. Okay, now my Pokemon feel like they have a fighting chance. After the fight, we learn more about Atticus as they bullied him for his taste in clothes, as we also find out they actually never met the big boss, as they only talk through phone calls, but they're ride or die for their boss and won't go back to school unless he comes with them. So Clive starts putting things together as Team Star got painted as the villains, and wonders how he didn't realize that Team Star was also helping other students that got bullied. Once we leave, we have a talk with Cassiopeia as she slowly gives away that she's more involved with Team Star than she's letting on, as every time we beat a boss, she seems to feel bummed out, but it wasn't hard to figure out that Cassiopeia and Penny are the same person, as Penny tells us herself that she's good with electronics and hacking, and the way Cassiopeia contacted us first for the first time was by hacking our phone, so it was a little too obvious. She also tends to rat on herself, so she ended up telling us how Team Star was formed, but tries to play it off when she realized she said too much. So while I do like their backstories and how they overcame bullying, from here they just kind of said the same thing over and over again, but with slightly new details, like who trained them, who made the Starmobiles, you know, stuff like that. But I will say, I do like how Koraidon started popping up when Penny arrives to mess with her, as we get to see what she's actually like, not just give us information about Team Star. With that in mind, I make my way to Medeli and instantly felt like something was different. It was probably because for once we were actually seeing fully evolved Pokemon, but just new Pokemon in general, so it just felt refreshing after seeing the same Pokemon for a while now. I also ended up grabbing this Frigibax. I just thought he looked funny, so I was like, you're coming with me. Though I never ended up naming him. Eventually, I make it to the gym where Nemona calls out to us, as we find out she came running straight to us when she saw that we were heading to the gym, but she said that she didn't chase us down just to battle unless we wanted to. So we agree, and she did call us trash since she said her Pokemon were too strong for me, so she's gonna swap them out while we do our gym challenge. I was just left speechless. I mean, that's not what she said, but that's what she said. Anyways, for the gym challenge, we're supposed to order a secret menu item by getting clues from the restaurant, and I was so lost as only 2 people gave us hints, so I thought I was supposed to figure it out with that alone. But it turns out I was supposed to go outside and get hits from the other students who are trying to figure it out as well, so I felt dumb for a good 30 minutes. With that, I fight Larry, and his Dunsparce was a straight menace, as it would use Glare to paralyze us and then use Hyper Drill to do massive damage. Once he sent out Staraptor, I don't even know why I tried, it was over from here, as the rest of my team goes down with Facade, and I don't even know how, as that move is only strong when the Pokemon is burned, poisoned, or paralyzed, and there was nothing wrong with it, so it was just throwing straight haymakers. In any case, I got whooped again. I don't think I've ever had this happen before, where suddenly there's just this one Pokemon that wipes my whole team. I am definitely liking some of these fights. Alright, let's try again. This time I had DLT out, so when the Dunsparce appeared, I was able to land a flamethrower, doing about half and getting the burn before going down to a drill run. So next turn, I was able to knock him out with Cinnamon Twist, but he got revenge real quick as Staraptor used Facade to one-shot us. So I sent out Crunchwrap and used Yawn so that we wouldn't get Speed Blitz. So after Crunchwrap goes down, Staraptor goes to sleep, and we use Cross Chop with Cinnabon to win the fight. Even after knowing what would happen this time around, it was still crazy to see how strong his Pokemon are. After the fight, Farigirafix evolves into an Artibax, and we have a talk with Nemona and a lady named Gita, and Nemona is acting crazy again, as it turns out Gita is actually the top champion, and she was just seeing how we were doing for our gym challenges, and she said we were doing really good, but man, I was getting whooped multiple times. And that's when Nemona said that she can't take me away because she found me first, while we just stand there. In any case, we do have that battle, but I think Nemona took it a little too easy, as we didn't struggle at all. But I will say, I think I want to switch out DLT, he just hasn't been fun to use. With a gym down, I wanted to see if I could finally beat the Great Tusk, so I head back to the Asado Desert to fight him and immediately get one shot, but I didn't give up as I had to do the unthinkable. I put him to sleep, I wasn't taking no chances. I sent out Artibax and use Ice Fang until he goes down, and then sent out Cinnabon to finish him off, barely winning the fight. Like, I practically cheesed this fight. When it was time to have our rematch, it wasn't so bad since Arven showed up and he actually carried me, but I still had to put him to sleep. Why was he so strong? After the fight, we find the special herb again and feed it to Koraidon and Mabosstiff, and Arven mentions that Koraidon does look a lot better, but he's not even close to being in his original form, and it's been so long since I started the game, I honestly forgot what he looked like. He also mentioned that maybe there's something wrong with him mentally, and by the way Koraidon reacted, I think he hit the nail on the head. But hey, he can glide now. For Mabosstiff, nothing ended up happening, so that did suck to see, but we still have one more herb to go to, and Arven is really hoping he can cure him. Once we finished eating, it was finally setting in that the game is slowly coming to an end, and I can confidently say I don't remember the music that much. Like, every Pokemon game has really good music. Like, you'll play the game and have multiple tracks that you like, but here I can only remember the music to the school and like the star battles and nothing else. Other than that, I think giving this game my undivided attention really made the difference. When I first played the game, I had actually streamed it, but since I was focused on talking to my viewers at the time, I didn't realize that I was missing out on what I liked most about the game. And to be fair, I still don't like half the Pokemon, but the story with Arven and seeing how crazy a rival could be really made me want to keep going and see what would happen next. Anyways, I think it's about time I started wrapping up the gym leaders and also evolve most of my Pokemon, as I was waiting for something to happen and nothing happened. It turns out Crunchwrap never evolved because it leveled up through quick battles, and they won't evolve unless you actually battle a Pokemon, person, or rare candies, so that was an easy fix. For Cinnabon, I never got Rage Fist, so I had to look through my forgotten moves to learn it, and then I just spammed it until it evolved. With that, I make it to our next gym, and for this gym challenge, we use Koraidon to slide down a slope while dodging obstacles, and my only real complaint is that it just could have been smoother. It just did not look that good. And surprisingly, I had a really hard time beating Grusha. I thought it was gonna be easy as I had 2 fire types and a fighting type, but Side Titan had liquidation, so Crunchwrap goes down, and when I try to use DLT, we get absolutely rocked with Ice Spinner while Flamethrower did nothing. Yeah, I'm kicking this guy to the curb. Luckily, with our newly evolved Cinnabon, we take down Side Titan, but since we use close combat, our defense goes down, so when he sent out Altaria, I was able to use close combat one more time, but we weren't able to finish them off, and Hurricane one-shots us. Luckily, Cinnamon Twist is pretty fast, so I was able to send him out and use Crutch to win the fight, and Cinnamon Twist got real disrespectful by dancing on them and evolving. It also turns out there's a gym like 2 minutes away from here, so I went straight there, and since the gym leader uses ghost type Pokemon, she didn't stand a chance as I had all types of counters with Cinnabon, Crunchwrap, and Cinnamon Twist. With that done, we only have one more gym leader to go to, and it was actually the only town I liked as they had this Coliseum with pictures of the old sprites they used to use in Gen 2, so I loved that. What I didn't like was the gym challenge. They had me doing something called emotional spectrum practice, where this lady named Dendra tells us to show an emotion, and we pretty much copy what she does, and it was just like a really bad rhythm game, if you could even call it that. It sucked too because Dendra looked so cool just for her to do the same 2 poses during the whole thing. What is going on? She definitely lost aura. And to make it worse, the gym leader uses Psychic type Pokemon, so unfortunately for Tulip, she didn't stand a chance. Not too long after, Nemona and Gita congratulate us as we can now face the Pokemon League, but I don't want to do that just yet as it just felt really weird trying to become champion when I still got a Titan and bosses to beat. But I will say overall, I give the gyms like a 7 out of 10. I like the gym leaders themselves as you get to see the personalities and what they enjoy outside of battle. And I like most of the gym challenges, but the actual battles were kinda questionable. For example, I thought Katie was gonna terrestrialize into a different type to combat what bugs are weak to, but she just turned into a bug type, so it made the gym leaders a bit easier to deal with. I mean, I get it, it's a kid's game, but make a hard mode or something. I will say there was about 3 gym leaders that beat me up pretty well, and that's what I want to see more of. But getting back to the game, I really wanted to switch out DLT as she's just been flopping for a while now. So for a couple days now, I've been trying to find her replacement as I really wanted an electric type, but I didn't want to use anything. And that's when it hit me. What if I get a Pokemon that can terrestrialize into an electric type? So I spent a couple days doing raids to hopefully find a Pokemon that I like. And I really wanted to find a Teddiursa, but I had no luck. So I just kept doing raids until I found something I liked. But I'll talk about it more later when it actually happens. For now, it's time to face our last Titan, where Arven was carrying me again with the one Pokemon I was hating on, Greedent, as they were lowering Dodonzo's defense while we tried doing as much damage as possible with Cinnabon, but we ended up being bait. After that, we sent out DLT and used Razor Leaf while Greedent uses Takedown to win the fight. Right after, we head inside the cave to get the last herb we needed, where my game crashed again, bro, how? And the worst part is, I actually didn't save. The horror. I was so scared to restart my game again as I truly didn't know where I was gonna be. And it turns out I have to start at the 8th gym again. Now the gym itself isn't a problem, but it's everything I did right after that. The electric type raids, a bunch of materials, a few places we could teleport to, so having to do that all over again was something I was not gonna do, I'm not gonna lie. Eventually, I did make it back and we gave the herbs to Koraidon and Mabosstiff, where we didn't see any signs of Mabosstiff feeling any better, and we see Arven trying to collect himself, where Mabosstiff finally gets up and is at 100%, where we get a good ending for Arven before it gets cut short as Professor Sada calls us to let us know that Koraidon can now climb anything, where she hears Arven and tells him that she's been looking for him because he's the only one that can get into her lab. Oh nah, that's just messed up. No wonder why he doesn't like her. It turns out they haven't talked in years and that's all she had to say. Obviously, Arvin is super mad about it, but since we helped him out, he doesn't mind taking us to our lab, and yeah, I'd be fuming for weeks. Now that we've beaten all the Titans, it's time to take care of Team Star. So to make this quick, we spam Gunshot to beat up Ortega, where we finally hear the whole story of what happened with Team Star a year and a half ago, where pretty much they confronted their bullies but they ran away as soon as they saw them and ended up dropping out. But we also learn more about the big boss as we find out that they took all the blame for Team Star and got sent to the Galar region as punishment, but it wasn't really punishment as the former director just wanted her to rest since she was getting bullied as well. We also find out that the deputy director, different person by the way, tried to hide the whole incident and he just made it worse and got fired. Soon after, the director himself resigned, which in turn made all the other teachers resign as well, as they felt guilty for not noticing the bullying. I think anyway. But yeah, I was not expecting that at all. I didn't even know they replaced all the teachers. After that, I make my way to the last base as Clive has come to an understanding of what happened with Team Star, and now he knows what his final decision will be, but we don't know what he's talking about as we face Eri, by far the hardest fight in the game. Her Rev Room is out of this world. Not only does she use shift gear, sharply raising speed, and also raising her attack, after each turn she also gets a boost in defense. So by the second turn she just turned into a demon. And as you can imagine, it didn't go so well. After a couple attempts, I would face Rev with 5 of my Pokemon, but we would still lose. So I had no choice but to train my team up again and also teach them some new moves, and that really made the difference. Not only was her other Pokemon easier to handle, when it was time for our rematch with Rev, Baja Blast finally showed up and used acrobatics 2 times to get them the red HP as they used shift gear. Next turn they used combat torque to knock us out. So with Crunch Wrap we finished them off. With that we get our last backstory as we find out that Eri was hated because she was good at a lot of things, which made people really jealous. But we also find out she's really nice as well, as the girl who bullied her first eventually got bullied herself, and Eri helped her out and made her into a better person. Now that we've beaten the last star boss, we have another talk with Cassiopeia, as she thinks now that we've beaten all the bosses, they'll leave Team Star and go back to school, but we know that's not the case. We also find out that she was the big boss the whole time, and the reason why she wanted to disband them was because there was no need for them anymore, as they solved the problem ages ago, and to make sure that they go back to school, we're gonna fight Cassiopeia in the schoolyard to end Team Star. So as I head over there, we run into Clive and he finally gets rid of the costume, and this was a long time coming. I still couldn't stand it. Anyways, he claims he's Cassiopeia and wants to fight, and his freaky duck was insane. First of all, he looks disturbing to look at. Second, he would spam Aqua Step doing massive damage while also getting a speed boost, so I ended up losing like 5 times. It was no joke. So it was finally time to get my last member, where I found myself a Daxbun, and I should have named it, but I was too annoyed to come up with a name. So Daxbun it is. So when I did my rematch, it went really well. We terrestrialize and we get them really low, but since they used the Aqua Step, they take us down first. But I was just able to send out Cinnabon and use close combat to win the fight. Yeah, Daxbun really made the difference. After the battle, Clavel apologizes for lying, but asks us to defeat Cassiopeia to put all of this to an end. So let's go face the real Cassiopeia, as it did turn out to be Penny, where we fight, and she had all the evolutions, and the fight itself wasn't too bad as we did have a counter to most of them. But her Sylveon did take out 3 of my Pokemon, but it still wasn't enough and we win the fight. And I lied, there is one more backstory, as we learn more about Penny, as we find out after they defeated the bullies, she wanted to break up Team Star as things got out of hand, as the bullies ended up dropping out and there was no way they were getting off scot-free. So Penny took it upon herself to take all the blame and ghost them. But it honestly backfired since her friends weren't going back to school unless she did too. After that, Clive reveals that he's Clavel to Penny, and her reaction was pretty good too, as she was hating his whole fit, and I agree. We also see Team Star meet Penny for the first time, and they were just happy to see her more than anything, as Clavel apologizes for what they had to go through, and honestly, he went above and beyond. He could have just expelled them and called it a day, but he actually wanted to see what really went down and gave them a second chance, as they don't get in trouble and they can actually continue on as Team Star if they want to. But Penny still didn't know how to feel since she was heavily involved in taking down Team Star. But it turns out the members didn't care at all, as they realized she did all that for them. So it was just cool to see that they never blamed her for anything, but just waited for her instead. So that was different. So yeah, it was just good to see that they were still friends when it's all said and done. And since they did break a lot of rules, their bases are going to turn into training grounds under the guise of community service, so that's pretty cool. So in the end, I liked the conclusion to the story more than the journey itself, as we already knew early on what really happened, so it just felt like it was dragging a bit. But I like the fights way more than the actual gym leaders. 7 out of 10. Once that was over, we actually meet up with Penny and find out she ratted on herself again, as she ended up telling Clavel that she stole league points to reward us when we defeated each star boss. And to keep it simple, she pretty much stole money from the bank. But instead of being mad, they actually wanted her help in making the bank security better. And once she's done with school, she can actually work there if she wants to. So in the end, everything pretty much worked out for her. In any case, she thanks us for everything and says that she owes us one, and yes she does, but more on that later. For now, we can finish things up with Arvin as we head back to the lighthouse to open up Professor Sada's lab. And once we make it inside, it's super dusty and looks like nobody's been here for years, when suddenly she appears on the TV and tells us that she's in a place called Area 0 that's filled with unique Pokemon, and she needs our help with one final step, as she needs a book called Scarlet, and Arvin's been carrying this book around the whole time. So that saves us some trouble. The only catch is that Sada said that it's really dangerous in Area 0, so that we should wait until we get stronger and come with a couple friends. But Arvin isn't too thrilled about going, as that's where Mabostov ended up getting hurt. But since we are going, he's coming too, and to hype himself up, he wants to fight, and we do. But the battle itself was easy, but it was hard to see Cinnabon beat the brakes out of Mabostov, since this whole time we were trying to make Mabostov feel better. So it was just a tough watch. Arvin tells us if we're gonna go, we need to have at least a champion rank trainer and someone who's good with technology. And like I mentioned before, we got some people, but that's when it turns out that I have to become a champion rank trainer too, and that's crazy. So I end up teaching my Pokemon new moves and finish evolving everyone, and luckily that's all I had to do since I EV trained them a while back. But I will say I didn't train Excalibur, as I didn't think he was going to be my final member, but it's okay, he didn't need it. With that, I faced the league, and maybe I prepped a little too good, as we beat the Elite Four pretty easily, so here's a little montage. And again, I think teaching them new moves really saved my Pokemon, as they were hot garbage, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, let's face the champion Gita, and it did not go as expected. While I did struggle to beat up Espathra, when she sent out King Gambit, I switched into Crunchwrap, and after 2 turns of using Torch Song, I was able to knock them out. But for some reason, she sent out Avalugg, so I just used another Torch Song to knock them out, and it just happened again with Veluza and Gagoat. Her last Pokemon is Glamora, a Pokemon I have no clue about, so I used Night Slash to test the waters, but they go first and Terrestrialize into a rock type, so we didn't do much damage, and they used Dazzling Gleam. I thought Baja Blast was gonna go down, but he toughed it out, and we used Chilling Water before going down. The 2 trash sandwiches I made in the picnic coming in clutch. I didn't realize that's all I needed for my Pokemon to not give up and live on 1 HP. I was pretty mind blown. And you know what, I did not disappoint Baja Blast, as I sent out Cinnabon to finish the fight, and now I can be called a champion rank trainer. And all I gotta say is, what was that? I mean, 3 of her Pokemon were really cool, and then she had straight nonsense, man. I haven't been in a league and champion so fast since X and Y. It's honestly a shame. She could have been absolutely broken. With that, Gita walks us to the entrance, where we find Nimona waiting for us, as we truly have become equals, and she asks us if we can be rivals for life. And you know what? Yeah, she might be a little crazy, but what's life without problems? Right after, she wants to battle, but to make this fight even more special, we're going to the place where it all started, the Mesagosa Central Plaza, to have our first fight as true rivals, and it felt really cool as we watched people gather around to see it happen, and I surprisingly had a hard time. Her Palmont was a straight demon. They used double shock to one-shot Cinnabon, and when I tried sending out Baja Blast, it turns out they're faster and they use close combat to one-shot us again. What is going on? I send out Crunch Wrap and we get hit with nonsense again as they hit us with Ice Punch that freezes us. Not only that, they landed a crit. I mean, it didn't do much damage, but that's just disrespectful. After a couple turns, we thaw out and finally knock them out. Another problem we had was the Dunsparce. I feel like there's starting to be a pattern here and I don't like it. Pretty much after I take down Goodra, I thought I was going to be able to land one hit before going down with Excalibur, but somehow they're faster and use Dragon Rush to knock us out. I was starting to get worried since Cinnabon had already went down, so I sent out Daxbun and used Play Rough before going down. And next turn, I sent out Cinnamon Twist, and after taking a hit from Hyper Drill that did almost half, I was starting to feel a little uneasy, as what if this thing is faster than my Krookodile, but I was worried over nothing, as we ended up being faster. Her last Pokemon is Meowscarada, and knowing that we're going to terrestrialize, we do as well, as I try to turn into a dark type so that her grass attacks wouldn't knock us out, while we use Gunk Shot to counter them, but my goodness, that did not work. They ended up getting a crit. And what's crazy is that they actually been hitting crits this whole time, and how are they doing that? Luckily, my last Pokemon is Crunchwrap, so when they use Shadow Claw, they don't do much damage, and we use Torch Song to knock them out, beating Nemona at her very best, and she was ecstatic. She couldn't believe she actually lost, as she realizes she finally met someone who can bring the absolute best in her. With that, we finished out the second main quest, and even though we flew by the Elite Four and Champion, I think battling Nemona was probably the funnest part of this whole quest. Even though most of the fights were super easy until the end, I had more fun seeing what nonsense she was gonna say next. Too bad we still don't know much about her backstory. Overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. I didn't realize it, but this video is so long, I forgot that I rated the gym leaders already, so I guess it worked out in the end. I'll just give it the extra point. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Since we're champion ranked trainers now, we can finally head to Area 0, where we meet up with Arvin, Nemona, and Penny. And it just now hit me that they don't really know each other. Like, we know them individually, but they only ever said hi to each other, so seeing them interact for the first time was shocking to say the least. Not too long after, we can hear Professor Sada talking to us on an intercom speaker, and for the most part, this is how she's going to be talking to us, but she pretty much just shows us how to get to Area 0, as we have to jump off this platform, where we start to see everyone slowly warm up to each other, as we can now start our final journey and finally enter Area 0. Once we reach the bottom, Koraidon doesn't feel so well and returns to his Pokeball, as Professor Sada gives us a call and lets us know that she's at the deepest part of Area 0, where the main lab is located. But in order to reach her, there's 4 locks that we have to disable first, and we can find them in these research labs, and she just tells us good luck. And this by far was my favorite part of the game. I immediately noticed the music, as it just felt so immersive, like it fit the tone of this area so well. It made it seem like something could go wrong any second, but you can't help but go further into Area 0. And as we explore, everyone is moving with you and talking with each other, which made this even better. It was to the point I stopped moving around just to read what they were saying and soaking it all in, as they start to get to know each other and snap at each other as well. Not too long after, we reach our first lab and run into a Glamora, the same Pokemon Gita had, and it seems the deeper we go, the more rare Pokemon we'll find. So with Nemona, we tag team to beat it up. And even though I love this area, I still can't get over how sucky double battles look, as you can't see your Pokemon at all, and you can't see yourself and the person you're double battling with, so it just doesn't feel special, if that makes sense. Not to mention, if you try to mess with the camera angle, again, you just make it look worse. This also happens every time you face a Titan with Arvin, so it didn't feel like he was there. I will say the only time they do it right is when we faced Rhyme a while back and made me wonder why didn't they do this for every double battle. It just looks 10 times better. Once we reach our first lab, something feels off with Professor Sada, as it doesn't feel like she's talking to us, but more like giving instruction and that's it, and Arvin starts to question it too. As we explore these labs, we'll find these notebooks that give us more information about Professor Sada and what she did down here, as we find out she made tarot orbs. We also learn that Arvin used to get a couple emails from Sada, but after a while he stopped receiving them and hasn't heard from her in years, where she just randomly pops up and tells us to go to Area Zero, and he's not happy about it, as Penny starts to see why he's always so angry and says we're not here to judge and apologizes for snapping at him, and Arvin apologizes as well while they still tease each other. So as we go deeper, we learn more about everyone as Arvin starts to go into detail about certain things, like how he actually tried to meet his mom, but on his way down, they met a violent Pokemon that ended up hurting Mabosstiff. So now we know what really happened. Or when Arvin talks about how he did live with his mom at one point with Koraidon, but they had to keep him in secret, but one day Koraidon went crazy over a Pokemon and a couple neighbors saw him, so Sada had no choice but to go back down to Area Zero, and he never saw his mom again. So now we know why he hates Koraidon so much, as it made him believe it costed him from seeing his mom most of his life, as Penny finds out how Nemona can't read the room at all, as she says she wants to battle the Pokemon that beat up Arvin. So man, that was just wow. Anyways, we finally learn about Nemona's past, as she's actually rich, as her dad helped make the Rotom phones. It sounds like she had a good childhood, but seeing her get annoyed when Arvin teases her about how she addresses her mom and dad and being called a pampered princess was pretty funny, as for the most part we only ever see her when she's battle hungry. For Penny, we find out that her parents are overprotective and call her dumb names, as Arvin teases her about her feelings about her dad. So seeing them slowly become friends was a nice change of pace, as it quickly got serious, as Nemona of all people is starting to get tired. It makes me wonder if we should be worried. Not too long after, we reach our second lab and run into this thing called Screamtail, and after we beat it up, we start to question what type of Pokemon are they, as that pink thing looks pretty much like a Jigglypuff. Not too long after, Sada talks to us and confirms they are ancient Pokemon, and while we couldn't believe it at first, Professor Sada tells us there's actually a time machine that summons ancient Pokemon, but the cost of having it was catastrophic, as she doesn't go into detail about it just yet. But we do learn while they can summon ancient Pokemon, if a human were to use it, they wouldn't be able to come back to the present, as Arvin starts to understand why she abandoned him all those years ago, and questions what's the real reason of us being here, but she brushes it off and says that she'll tell us in person. Once we reach our third lab, we run into a Great Tusk, and after beating it up, Arvin mentions that we actually beat this thing before, and that's when Penny starts to question Professor Sada, as we've been running into these dangerous Pokemon this whole time, and if one actually managed to escape, this could turn into something serious, and wonders how come she hasn't done anything. And now that I think about it, yeah, it could have been pretty bad, since that Great Tusk wasn't even its original size. It was like 10 times bigger. Eventually we head inside, and Penny wonders if Koraidon is an ancient Pokemon, as he looks like one. And as we're about to get answers from Arvin, Professor Sada appears and tells us that Koraidon is the first ancient Pokemon she successfully managed to get from the time machine, and we find out there's actually 2 of them, so maybe our Koraidon has a friend or something. So as we start to question Sada, we finally reach the end of Area Zero, as we start to see these ancient Pokemon all over the place, as we come across a bunch of crystals as well that look exactly like the ones we used to terrestrialize our Pokemon. And Nemona suggests letting out Koraidon since he lived here his whole life, but he refuses to leave, and Penny says that he might be scared of this place as he was visibly shaking when we first landed, and it reminded her a lot when she was in school, when she was ignored and bullied. After that, we make it to the last lab, where we find it an absolute mess, as Sada tries to talk to us, but it's glitching out, and everyone thinks she's just having technical issues, but Arvin thinks it might be something else, but doesn't elaborate. Once we read the books again, we start to piece together what Professor Sada was trying to do, as she was trying to create a paradise where they can all live together, but we don't know who she's talking about just yet. But as we read these books, we find out that she needs more people and time, as it sounds like her husband walked away while she was pregnant with Arvin, so she desperately needed help as she didn't know if she could trust anyone or if they could even understand what she's trying to do, and says that if there was only two of me. Not too long after, we find out she eventually did get an assistant who was as smart as her, but she had some flaws, but it wasn't enough to matter as everything is working twice as fast with her around. As we learn that the second Koraidon is a bit dangerous. Once we disable the locks, Sada appears again and apologizes for the messed up audio, but Arvin knows that's not the case, but Sada ignores him again and tells us to keep moving to the main lab. And well, at least we know where you learn how to ignore people. Anyways, we find it and it's covered in a huge crystal, where Sada appears again and tells us to be careful opening up the lab as there's a bunch of ancient Pokemon that are trying to break free, as Arvin suggests that we should take out Koraidon to help us out, as Penny disagrees, but Arvin is convinced that he will help, as Nemona agrees as well, but I wasn't so sure. But Nemona says that she'll look out for him, so we take him out when another Koraidon appears, and yeah, he's the violent one as he tries to attack our Koraidon. But that's when the lab opens up and he decided to go there instead, as we see a horde of ancient Pokemon appear. And to make this easier, I'll just call the other Koraidon Evil Koraidon. So as we fight with everyone, they just keep coming, so everyone tells us that we should move on, as Arvin gives a pep talk to Koraidon, as even though he ruined his childhood, seeing him be scared doesn't make him feel any better, and tells him to keep pushing forward, and Koraidon is starting to get more confident. So with that, we go inside, and man, Arvin has probably one of the worst childhoods of all time, and still had the heart to give the Pokemon that pretty much ruined his life a pep talk. He's better than me, that's all I gotta say. I think this is the first Pokemon game where I truly do care for these characters. With that, let's finally meet Professor Sada for the first time, where this went from bad to worse, as Arvin can't catch a break as we see Professor Sada slumped over a chair, and we realize something isn't right, and we find out that she actually died at the 4th research lab when both Koraidons were fighting over territory and the evil one was beating down our Koraidon. So to save him, Sada jumped in front of him and passed away from the injuries she received from it. It turns out the real Sada made an AI version of herself that helped her make huge progress in her research, as it also had all of her memories. We learned that the moment we talked to her for the first time, she had already passed away, and we were talking to her second copy this whole time. The reason why she wanted us to come to Area Zero was to stop the time machine from bringing in more ancient Pokemon, as the time machine was actually automatic, and I don't have the heart to tell Arvin. Who's telling him? Not me. AI Sada explains she was obsessed with having a world where ancient Pokemon would live alongside modern Pokemon, but it was extremely flawed, as those ancient Pokemon carried around this primal energy of the past that makes them really violent, so if they were to actually be let out to the world, they would destroy everything, making all the current Pokemon extinct. And AI Sada couldn't understand why the real Sada would be okay with it, claiming it would just be a natural part of life. And it's crazy to see that an AI version of herself had more humanity than the real Sada, as she tossed aside co-workers, her husband, and her own child to make these ancient Pokemon coexist with modern Pokemon, just to lose it all in the end. So with the help of AI Sada, we're gonna shut down the time machine using the Scarlet book that acts like a key. But before we do, AI Sada tells us that the real Sada made countermeasures to make sure that the time machine would run forever. So once it activates, AI Sada will become nothing more than a battle machine to take down anything that gets in our way. And with that, we fight AI Sada, and honestly, it wasn't that bad. The hardest thing about this fight was just trying to figure out the weaknesses to all these ancient Pokemon, but once I figured it out, it went pretty smooth, as we also got a little lucky towards the end, as Roaring Moon almost knocked us out, but Cinnamon Twist literally held on and used Outrage to knock them out, and AI Sada couldn't believe it, and I didn't believe it either. What luck. Once the fight was over, everyone comes rushing in as they're wondering what happened, as Arvin could tell that she isn't his mom. But that's when AI Sada starts glitching out as we find out how she feels about Arvin, as she's happy to see him and is sorry that he was alone for so long, before the room went red and find out that the real Sada put one last countermeasure to keep the time machine running, as she stops our Pokeballs from working, and this time we have to fight Paradise Protection Protocol, where she sends out evil Koraidon, and with all of our Pokemon being locked, we almost lose hope as even Penny can't get them to open. But that's where we figure out that we can send out our own Koraidon, as it's technically Sada's Pokemon, and Koraidon finally turns into his battle form and fight. And we get whooped. I thought we were gonna black out as Flamethrower and Collision Course wasn't doing much damage, while evil Koraidon bulks up and uses Giga Impact, leaving us with 1 HP. So I do the unthinkable and use a potion while evil Koraidon has to recharge, when everyone tells us that our Terra Orb is glowing, so we immediately Terrestrialize and use Terra Blast 2 times to win the fight, as AI Sada finally comes back and praises all of us for coming this far and never giving up. But it's not sunshine and rainbows yet, as we find out that she's a part of the system and the time machine will never stop unless she's gone as well, as she tells us that she's been watching us the whole time and she was jealous as she could never leave Area Zero, so now she will use the time machine to travel the world of the past, as she's dreamed for that for so long, as she apologizes to Arvin again as she kept the truth hidden from him for so long, and tells us that the real Sada truly did love him as we watch her disappear. And now Arvin knows the truth, which he's been denying this whole time, as he had a feeling that was the case, but seeing her face and hearing her voice, even if it was fake, it was still real to him, and it's sad to see in the end he had a bittersweet ending as he tries to collect his thoughts when Nomona can't read the room again and says that at least Koraidon looks cool. Bro, she has no chill, but luckily Penny has some sense and tells Arvin that AI Sada is finally seeing her dream come true and is probably having a blast, and Arvin thanks her for that. With that, we finish the last quest and take the long way home, as we all want to treasure this moment as we all become really good friends. So did I like this game when it's all said and done? Absolutely. Now don't get me wrong, everything that I hated about the game I still don't like, and I think the first 3 hours of the game is probably the hardest to get through, as that's how long it took me before I started to be okay with it. But my goodness, there were some fights that absolutely kicked my butt, and I love that. And it was really random too, a trainer, a Titan Pokemon, a gym leader, so I never got too comfortable, but at the same time I was flying by gyms and the Elite Four. One thing I wasn't expecting to be that good was the story with Arvin. I didn't think too much about it, as I thought it was a simple story about him healing his best friend, but it quickly turned into something else. While the Titans were like a 6 out of 10, Area Zero got a whole 10 out of 10. It was peak to me. Anyways, y'all let me know if I'm crazy. If you like this video, like the video as it really helps out the channel. And if you ended up seeing this whole thing, subscribe, as I'm clearly doing something right, as I got a whole bunch of videos for you to check out. And this one is by far my favorite video, but it took way too long to make. So I hope you enjoy it, and until next time, see ya.